For the town of Bunavista, can I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Lacy,
Here.
Trustee Eckstein,
Here.
Trustee Fay,
Here.
Trustee Nyberg,
Here.
Trustee Rowe,
Here.
Trustee Swisher,
Here.
Trustee Volpe.
Here. Okay, thank you all. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. I would remind everybody, please, to silence your cell phones, if you would. First is the agenda adoption. Do I have any comments or questions on the agenda or change on the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion. Nyberg, motion Nyberg.
I'll second that.
Second Fay. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on consent agenda?
Mary did have a question, but I see Grant's not here, but maybe Philip knows just about the short-term rental update.
Yep.
100, and it's on page 22.
Let me catch up with you. Sorry. Let me get there real quick so everybody can see what we are.
And I see Mark's not.
Grant is on, by the way, but I can.
Oh, okay. Thank you. See that the number, the total license issued 118, is that year to date or is that all the licenses in existence now? Like, does it start over January 1?
That's starting.
Go ahead, Grant.
That's starting January 1 and then up to the date of that report, so March 31st. So that's the whole, that's up to that quarter.
Thank you.
So that's all active too.
So it's like all the ones that are operating, right? Perfect. So that is, and then, thank you. And then the Colorado, I don't think Mark is on here, but Mark is, the Chaffee County Director of Housing report. Is BV participating in the developers forum or is that a county initiative?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on consent agenda? And I do want to point out, thank you very much, Grant, for that update.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you all.
I would entertain a motion to approve changes amended. Come on, folks.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Libby.
Second it.
Second, Nyberg. Oh, I'm sorry. Nyberg got you, Cindy. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is public comment. I believe, did I see a comment here from Philip? Maybe. I just thought I saw somebody in the
Check the
chat.
chat real quick. So many places.
I remind, nope, I don't see anything now. Okay, I remind everyone that if you're on your cell phone, you may press *9 and the meeting host will prompt you to unmute when it's your turn to speak. You may raise your hand if you are joining us. Also, you may send an email and we will try to catch up with you there. I don't see anything.
Let me check attendees real quick.
There you go.
I'm not seeing any hands raised from attendees or panelists.
All right, thank you very much. I'll close public comment. First item on the agenda is a public hearing. Should the Board of Trustees approve an application for a hotel and restaurant liquor license for Crave BV LLC? This is a public hearing, so we will hear comments from staff first. Philip, I believe you're going to lead off on this one.
I am. So good evening. Paula is out this evening, so I will do my best to represent her in this application. So Ryan McFadden, thanks for joining us. So let me introduce you real quick. This is a public hearing for a hotel and restaurant liquor license submitted by Ryan McFadden for Crave BV LLC to be located at 300 East Main Street. Proper public notice and for this public hearing was published in Chaffey County Times on April 1st, 2021, and posted on the property on March 24th, 2021. In your packet, you will see a description of the criteria and how the applicant met that criteria. That included a satisfactory background check, an inspection of the building plans and specifications by town staff, department heads, and Chaffey County Public Health. All of that was completed and found to be in good order. Proof of possession of the premises has been provided. And then a petition was circulated for determining the needs and desires of the neighborhood. So that's also in the application and in the packet and is in good order. And when conclusion, staff finds that the application is complete and meets the requirements outlined in the Colorado Liquor Code and recommends the Board of Trustees approve the application for a hotel and restaurant license as applied for by Crave BV LLC. And I will pause there. That concludes the staff memo. It is in your packet if you have any questions.
Questions for staff? Hearing none, I will open this portion of public comment to Ryan. If you would have any comments you'd like to make, Ryan, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. I think I know most of you, and I hope most of you know me, but if you want some background, I'd be happy to give that. I've been lived here since 2009 and started Eddie Line, and now I have Simple Eatery, and so we're just opening another location. And I take all the enforcements and the codes seriously. I run by the book, so it's just what we do and how I like to run things. So, hopefully if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. The only thing slightly unique about this spot is we're licensing the whole premises, even though there's going to be a couple other bays with the restaurant that we'll kind of have access to, and it's kind of open, very much like we did Simple Eatery with the Trailhead. But we'll have partitions and manage, control that way.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Trustees, do you have any clarifying questions for Ryan? Okay, thank you, Ryan. I will open this portion of the public hearing to public comment. Again, we will look for anybody to raise your hand, press *9, email anything that we can see. If anyone has a public comment. I see nothing there. So I close this portion of the public hearing, public comment. Any other clarifying questions before I close this portion of the public hearing? Hearing none, I close this portion of the public hearing. Staff or trustees, any comments between you? Questions? Motion to approve, deny?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Norm.
Second.
Second, Volpe. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Exton,
Yes.
trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ryan.
Good job, Ryan. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Bunavista Community Grants. We'll have a presentation by Joseph Teifel with a summary of our application and recommendations.
Good evening, trustees, Administrator, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you all for having me this evening. Really excited to be with you. Thank you also for once again entrusting the Community Foundation with the trust of managing your community grants process. I'm not going to go in detail into each grant recommendation. I'm more than happy to answer specific questions that you might have, but I might just set a couple of frames of context for you this evening. As you saw in the packet, the two main changes that you all approved and that we recommended prior to the implementation of this whole program were, first, that we move the timeline from what has been a traditional timeline of a late or quarter three, quarter four application process into a quarter one, quarter two application and award process. And there were two main drivers for that decision. The first was that given the pandemic and all of the different resources as well as challenges that we're facing, not only the nonprofit community, the town itself, but also the Community Foundation, we felt it most appropriate to push this 2021 grant cycle into the first quarter, second quarter cycle to both honor the ability of nonprofits to pursue pandemic-related relief grants, but also for the second reason of aligning it a little bit more closely with the fiscal year in which it rests in the budget year. We felt like it was more appropriate in a permanent fashion to have it in quarter one, quarter two. The second primary change in this year's grant program was consolidating the application process into a single application process between the town of Bunavista and the city of Salida. As you all know, those have been very separate processes in the past. And we felt like, given that the majority of applicants actually serve both residents of Bunavista and Salida, that having a combined application would not only reduce stress and capacity challenges on nonprofit applicants, it would also allow us to combine and consolidate and make more efficient the review process. So those are the two primary changes. And I'll say that we, as we did last year, and as I'm sure we will continue to do, we learned many lessons that we will continue to incorporate into future programs. The primary one is that as we started a consolidated application process, we learned about the challenges in allocating funds from a single application between two municipalities and two different budgets. One result of this learning was actually that we recommended to Salida City Council last week that they move from a set dollar amount allocation for community grants. In this case, for 2021, that was at $40,000, equal to Bunavista. That they move from that to a % of their budget allocation, like the town of Bunavista. So that is currently in the minds of council members in Salida, and I'm pleased to say that it received positive initial impressions. So that was one of the things that we learned through this process. As you can see in the packet, we had 37 applicants. 32 were recommended for funding out of the competitive pool. 2 were denied during the initial staff review and initial stages of the committee review. And then 3 were recommended for funding as line item support organizations. Only one of those from the town of Bunavista, which was the Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to pause there. You all have the packet and the full sort of summary of each application. I'm more than happy to answer any detailed questions you might have.
Trustees, questions, comments?
I've got one. First of all, let me say, Joseph, that I think it's awesome. I think this is so much better than the job that we tried to do when we were managing this. It's beautiful. The question I've got is more administrative. The line item support for Boys and Girls Club. Is there a reason that if it's a line item that it goes to Chaffey County Community Foundation and then not to Boys and Girls Club, or if it's just a line item that automatically goes every year, can we just leave that as part of the budget? I think that's more of a question.
Absolutely. And
I can speak to that, Joseph. I think the first iteration last year that the foundation did for us, we did decide to remove a few of the line item groups out of this process. At that time, the Boys and Girls Club was left in. It essentially they have a set amount of money, but they go through this process where they explain what they're doing. There's oversight to it. Whereas the line items, we really don't do that as staff. We just provide them the money. They provide an invoice, a statement. We provide the funding each year. So if the board would like to move an entity out of this process, you guys absolutely can do that. There's nothing pressing as to why they need to stay or not.
I don't, it just, it's not, I have no problem.
Joseph, would you ever have a point where you would recommend an entity be added to our lineup?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Mayor Lacey. I think, you know, there's a variety of circumstances in which the committee might make a recommendation that organizations be considered for line item support. And there are two that come to mind for the town of Buena Vista. One is actually from our last year's program that was acted upon by you all. It was the American Legion. We recommended they be taken off of our sort of purview and simply added as a line item support, given their focus as an organization in providing the 4th of July celebrations and fireworks. We felt like that was such an integral part of town, and really not a question about the impacts or the reporting or the accountability. It was simply a given part of your budget. So that was a great action that the trustees took to take that out of the purview of the foundation. The other organization that comes to my mind that I know has been an ongoing relationship with the town for many years is BV Heritage and the museum that they manage. Given the historical importance of that building to the town, I think that's been a consistent question in the mind of committee over the past couple of years, is just wondering how that fits with a competitive grants process versus a values statement of being included in the budget of the town. So I would not sort of try to put my opinion on that, but that's one example of a question the committee came up with. While we aren't going to push on that, it's just a sort of a question that came up.
Thank you, Joseph. Any other questions at this point? Libby, go ahead.
Make a comment. One of the things that makes this particularly difficult is that you can see on page 86 that we have requests for grant money of $165,000, but we only end up with $80,000 that we can allocate out. So if we could get Salida to increase their share to be more like ours, which is 1% of sales tax, then we'd come a lot closer to having enough money to fund most of the requests.
And I want to just put out there that Mayor Pro Tem Fay was an incredible addition to our committee this year and really helped us sort through the allocation process. And I mentioned that Salida City Council has been asked for that, and the treasurer has conveyed that if they were to move to that schema, they would actually be contributing $84,000 for their 2021 budget anyways. So that's just a comparison that would move our sort of request to budget ratio to a much closer alignment, which I think would help with the allocation question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Is there, I don't know if there's any option out there, Joseph, and I know it's I'm going to say it's quite a curve if I want to put it that way. Are there any grant funding available that we could use to leverage our funds that get grants to help do this? Is there any of that available?
It's a great question, Mayor Lacey. I mean, to my knowledge, there's nothing in what I would call a systemic opportunity, which would be something that as a municipality you could leverage in order to add to your grants pool. That being said, there are individual organizations that did apply and are recommended for funding in this year's program that are leveraging the specific commitments from the municipalities for larger grant opportunities. One that comes to mind is the Chafee Housing Trust, in which the commitment from the town that we've recommended would actually be leveraged to help support their general operating budget. And it's literally a direct ratio. The more dollars the municipality commits, the more they're able to lock down from state funding. So I do know that individual organizations are constantly searching for those opportunities, but I'm not aware of any that might come to bear at the level of a program as a whole from the municipality standpoint.
Do they make you aware that they are looking at grants and that our funding would help their funding? Do they let you know that?
Absolutely. Again, the Chafee Housing Trust is an easy example. It is very explicit in their organization, very clear, or sorry, in their application, very clear that the request is in order to lock down matching dollars from the state, and that weighed heavily in the committee's decision-making. And as you can see from the summary spreadsheet, they're actually the organization that's receiving the highest, or we recommending they're receiving the highest percentage of their request.
And I will reiterate what Trustee Volpe said. Man, I'm glad you guys are doing this. Norm.
I have a question. Has the county been approached to put anything into this?
Thank you for that question, Trustee Nyberg. You know, I did approach the commissioners. It must have been in December or January, December 2019 or January 2020, pre-pandemic, about joining in a similar grants program. At that time, the commissioners felt that they would prefer to continue having a dedicated direct touch on every single application or every single request that came to them. I would love to revisit that conversation. In my opinion, having a unified countywide community grants program would be incredibly powerful and would continue to build the capacity of our nonprofit community. So I would do everything that I could to join with you in advocating for that, if that's something you felt was appropriate.
Never hurts to ask. Again.
Yep.
Maybe we can give some support.
Absolutely.
Maybe a letter, something.
Yeah, I think, you know, always written letters of support for something like, you know, anything intergovernmental. As you all know, you work so well across municipalities, across governmental lines. I just have so much respect for that. So continuing to push that idea into these other sectors like community grants would be incredible.
Any other questions, comments for Joseph?
So would this be where I could make a motion that we write a letter of support and the mayor signs it?
Have a motion on the table.
I'll second that one.
Second, Volpe. Further discussion? Do you want to clarify a little bit on that, Cindy, as to the letter? You're saying we would write it to the county, is what you're saying is?
Right, because that's where we want it to go, is to the county to support and invite them to support the community grant program.
You know, and I like the way you put that, invite them to, that's a very nice comment. I like that. Very nice comment. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion anymore?
I have one additional comment. Should we do the same for Salida to invite them to do as we do with the 1% as opposed to 40,000?
You want to make that in the same motion or a second motion?
Well, I think,
That's important if anybody.
Motion on the table, I make a motion.
Would you guys feel comfortable?
like maybe worked it during trustee staff too, or do you guys want to, feel like you want to
But
make?
we can, I mean, we've got a motion on the table.
Okay, so I guess for discussion, I just want to talk, I wonder.
Motion on the table, so I need a second or it dies from lack thereof.
Oh, my second stands.
I know, well, you just made another, did you make?
No, that was
a
new.
motion?
That was new. That was.
Okay, good. We got a motion in a second, so I need,
Still discussion,
we're going.
still discussion.
So we're going to do, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, just so we're clear.
Trustee Eckstein,
I feel like we need more discussion about it, so I'm going to say no. Which I feel like a jerk, but
Trustee Fay,
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yeah.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Colby.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. As in, we have another question that was raised by Volpe. What do you think? You want to pursue that at all, or it's already in the process, correct, Joseph? That
Yeah, I've already-
Slide is considering the 1%, yes.
They will be considering that as part of their 2022 budget process. They will, my understanding is they have not committed to considering that for 2021 amendment.
Great. No, and I think we can let that process, if everybody's agreeable, let that process move forward. Let's reach out and invite the county to join us all. And I think that's very good notion. Thank you, Cindy, for that comment.
Thank you.
By the way, Joseph, good job.
Yeah, you guys make it look, no, you don't make it look easy.
But Mayor,
Yes,
can I ask the board for a motion to actually approve these recommendations so we can move forward with funding?
thank you very much.
So moved.
Motion, Nyberg?
Second,
Second, Amy? Roll call vote.
Trustee Eckstein,
Comment.
Oh, you have a comment?
yes. Or
Okay, comment.
are we,
I need to send something to Joseph, because I think there's still a couple of places where the allocation doesn't work right between Salida and BB.
Okay.
see, that was like,
If you look at the Alliance and the Southwest Conservation Corps lines,
Yeah, and I know we had communicated that about that, trustee Fay, and I believe that I fixed that. However, I'm more than happy to work with you to get that resolved in a manner that you feel is resolved.
in our packet, it's still off a little bit.
are we in
Maybe we can
discussion?
Approve it with the changes that Joseph will make if necessary.
As proposed. Is that going to change our obligation?
No, we'll keep our obligation the same. They can adjust the allocation.
So it won't change the outlook. We're just agreeing to the budget at this point, what we have budgeted for this.
Correct.
And we have a motion, the second discussion. We good with that? So do we need to change the motion as with an amendment, or not really, because the budgeted line does not change?
Yeah, but you're actually approving the recommended allocation. So if you'll just amend the motion so that it allows, I guess, this adjustment, this amendment to specific allocation.
So as amended? Second, as amended? I think you did the second, am I correct?
Yes, Eckstein second,
As
yep.
amended, okay.
And then,
And we're going to go back to roll call vote.
Trustee Eckstein,
yes.
trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Colby.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
If I may.
You had a comment?
Thank you. I certainly think it's a great idea to invite the county and support Salida. I just want to figure if the 1%, because it's so much more, if the county does 1% or Salida does 1%, then BB, that was just more some of the questions I had. I'm not thinking it's a bad idea, but that was the reason. So I just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, Lillian, putting that on the record. Thanks.
Does
Thank you all very much.
contribute or no?
Next item on the agenda is Crossman Edition Water Master Plan. The board will receive information on the Crossman's Edition Water Master Plan and discuss developing water infrastructure strategies. And because I'm looking, Philip, who's leading this one?
We'll let Mark introduce
There it is.
this. Yes.
Mark and Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you guys see a map on the screen? An aerial? Excellent. So I wanted to introduce this topic, and then I'll turn it over to our engineering consultants to really talk about the modeling. We're talking about the Crossman's Edition area. So this is the area in the northwest side of town, west of Highway 24, north of Crossman's Avenue, south of Tractor Supply and Love's. So On the screen before you is an aerial imagery, and I'm going to be showing you some maps to kind of give you a detailed description of the background as to what has happened in the past and where we are, and give you the kind of basic information and all the technical details. I'll turn over to Rick with our consultants to present about the water model. So we have this area in town on the screen that has very little development. What development that it does have, it has because there's been access to the town's existing water infrastructure, either along Crossman or along Highway 24. There are a couple of properties, particularly Napa and the storage units north of Napa, that have developed. The storage units don't have water. They're just storage buildings. Napa has an existing well on it, but pretty much by and large, all the ground besides that is raw land that has very little roads, very little utilities, including the town's water. So kind of give you a base of what is there today. To give you a little bit of background, the town had Crossman's Addition incorporated into its town limits. Crossman's Addition was actually platted way back in 1892. This is the actual drawing from the county records.
Oh,
So you could see the level of detail that was created back in 1892. After the highway came in, the property, the property was replatted with the highway, and this is the plat that was created back in 1956. So there were some slight changes from 1956 and 1892. Particularly, there were some rights of way that weren't dedicated to the town for some alleys and for Garfield west of Harrison. And then in 2016, a portion of the other area outside of the Crossman's Addition was platted with the O'Reilly subdivision into 3 lots. The subdivision that was approved there was developed and approved with plans to connect to the water line on the east side of Highway 24, meaning they had to get to the water line that the town ran up the east side of Highway 24. Town has been working with O'Reilly's. They submitted plans, did some engineering. We approved a site plan with basic plans for engineering back in 2016. And then they came back in 2019 and were working to obtain a connection to that water system. They've identified that bore, if it can be done to connect to Highway 24, was going to be a number higher than 300,000, and that was just for the portion to connect to the highway. CDOT required them to do a bore as opposed to an open trench cut in the highway because of the disruption that would cause to Highway 24. So O'Reilly has not moved forward. They came through with some plans and said, what do you think? And our engineers have some concerns just in general, given the amount of large boulders that are under the surface of the ground, particularly if they're trying to bore underneath the highway, if that can actually be done without hitting any large boulders. So there's some concerns, physically can it done, and then there's some concerns financially about that connection. So town, they asked town to, what do you think? At that point, town staff and our consultants said, well, maybe there are some other options we can explore. Let's take a look at a basic water model. So our consultants have put together a water model, and we'll talk more about that. We created that, and put together a draft, and we sent it out to the 12 property owners that are affected that don't have water. We did get one mailing back from a property owner, so they never got their mail because we sent it to the mailing address that's on file with the assessor's office. We've also received a couple of inquiries from other property owners. And as such, we've also received some engineering that we just received today at 4 o'clock, which I can't comment on because we just received it. So we have generated some interest in what we have come up with and what we will need to come up with as a final plan. So we wanted to bring this topic to your information to you so that you understand what we are trying to do to try and see what we can do to get a significant section of town that doesn't have water. And this is only a water model. This doesn't involve electric, gas, sewer, all the other utilities, doesn't involve roads, sidewalks, all those kind of things. This is strictly just a water model because we have been receiving inquiries from people looking to buy property in this area as to what does the town want? We didn't have a good answer, so we're trying to create a model that we can use to figure out what it is that we do want and how we would look to have that develop as all these properties develop in the future. So just to give you a little bit more background, the area in Crossman's Edition, a good portion of it is zoned R2 OT, which is a residential zone district. When we rezoned in 2018, we allowed for smaller lot sizes such as that original 1892 plat and the lots that are in the 1956 plat. Additionally, the properties along the highway are zoned highway commercial. This is an ownership map of the area. So these are all the owners that we mailed this draft report to inform them of what we're trying to do to see if we can figure out another alternative to get water to serve this area that doesn't necessarily involve a bore underneath Highway 24. This is an example of what the assessor's map shows in terms of ownership. So various collections of lots are created for assessment purposes, and this is what the assessor's map shows. It also shows the portions of rights of way for alleys that are not dedicated, were not dedicated with that 1956 map. On this site, you'll see the storage unit in the upper right-hand side, the northeast corner. That's the storage unit that does not have any water, but it's just a storage building. And then the Napa does have a well. Next map shows kind of the whole situation in terms of the lots from the original or from the 1956 plat, plus the various rights of way conditions that exist. So you'll see down in the lower southwest corner, you'll see rights of way that weren't dedicated with that plat in 1956. You'll see an alley that was vacated back in 1996. North of that, you'll see some slivers of rights of way that remain as they currently were allowed to have given the changes from the 1892 to the 1956 plat. So those are rights of way, but they're not rights of way that are wide enough to get a street in there or a water line potentially. We also vacated alleys and rights of way in 1981 in the northeast corner. And then we also vacated part of Grant, Garfield, and Pleasant, which is the blue shown in 1981. And then the green shows O'Reilly's subdivision, which is also does not have access to a town water line. So a little bit more information for you. You can see the existing water lines as they currently exist in this. The dark blue lines on the east side of the highway, it's a 12-inch line that was run up in 2009 up to allow for True Value to develop. They actually installed the line. An 8-inch came down to the north edge of Crossman's subdivision, directly there at Harrison. We have a 6-inch line that is in Crossman. And then when you get to the intersection of Crossman and Pleasant, we have 8-inch lines that are provided there. To kind of give you an idea, and we'll get more into detail as our consultants present this, here's what the dark blue, the blue line on the east is that 12-inch line, the red is the 8, the 6 is the green. The proposed alignment that we did with the water model is shown in blue, zigzagging through this area. And then that's just the main distribution. There are other water lines that will more than likely have to be 8-inch to meet fire flows and pressure flows for development that will also have to be developed, and we'll have to make determinations on those. But there are probably going to be a network of new water pipes that are going to need to be installed to serve the area. And again, this is the proposed alignment that we have modeled and prepared that model on, and we'll talk more about that later. Again, going back to the ownership map, approximately 84% of the land is owned by 3 property owners: River Rim and BV Earnings and Buffalo Investments, which are owned by the same person, make up a good portion of that. Dean Harrow is also in that 84%. We have approximately 6% in the storage and Napa facilities that either have water, don't have a need for water now, but if they ever need to redevelop into something else commercially that needs water, they'll need access to. We have another 8 properties that make up approximately 7%. So we have smaller land holders in the area. In the northeast corner, we've even received an inquiry from a person who is potentially looking at a retail marijuana facility. And so we've had some inquiries on that site. We also recognize that there are smaller property owners in the northwest corner and along the south. And then we have O'Reilly's, which is approximately 3% of the land area, which has purchased land from BV Holdings, which has started this conversation. In order to get any water line to try and serve this area, to try and meet the needs of those large landowners, this is an alignment that is going to need to be installed to get to those larger landowners, and will in fact require some easements from BV Earnings to get across their property. BV Earnings property, that large rectangle, that is still a collection of small lots from the original 1956 plat and the vacated rights of way that we vacated back in 1981. And the L-shaped lot for O'Reilly's is also an area where we would potentially need an easement in that old Pleasant Avenue rights of way that no longer exists. But if they need to develop, they'll need to do, if they're developing outside of the existing boundaries of the existing lots, they're going to need to do a subdivision. And we'll have to have that conversation about how water is distributed and the need for future easements that will be needed that potentially can be easily accommodated in any commercial development, particularly if it's going to be a large scale commercial project with larger parking lots. This is kind of a map that we have. This is properties that we have received inquiries from. So the town is getting questions from people looking at these properties. These properties are either currently on the market or already purchased by O'Reilly. And I think there may be a contract, I don't know, potentially on the retail marijuana facility. Those are all the properties that we found out that are on the market, and we've received plenty of inquiries on a good portion of these. And so those people looking to develop are looking to the town, what do we need to do for water? So that's part of the reason we want to be able to answer that question so that anyone who chooses to develop on these properties knows what the town is going to be expecting. And then areas that are shown are areas that are probably going to need a subdivision if anything is going to be developed outside of the existing lot pattern, and there are constraints on that existing lot pattern because of those vacated rights of way or those smaller portions of rights of way. We had an inquiry down at the southeast corner from a gas station that was looking at that L-shaped O'Reilly's lot, as well as the former Papa Billy's or Branding Iron property. They were looking to combine that. So we have gotten plenty of inquiries and we've not been able to give them an answer. And that's why we said we needed to do a water model. So with that background, before I introduce Rick with our team, are there any questions on generally the information that you guys got up to this point?
Why do we think that there'll be more rocks there than what True Value had to drill going underneath the highway? Just location?
I would say, I think that there's a good potential for large boulders that we know, and the size of the board that would be needed is going to be complicated enough if they don't hit any boulders. So again, you probably solve any problem if you throw enough money and engineering at it, but we recognize that there's a high potential given the amount of boulders that we have up in the north side of town, that might be an impediment to that bore.
So going back to my question though, did True Value hit anything?
I couldn't tell you about that. That was in 2009, and I don't have enough history on what happened back in 2009.
Did they bore? They definitely bored? Okay.
They actually, just history, I know the bore was crooked enough that they had, the water line would go straight through. They had to come back in and do it again. Okay.
Right. And so in that, when that line was done in 2009, the town participated in the oversizing of that line. And the town is still paying back True Value for the upsizing of that line.
Right. And then also you said the highway department was requesting a different bore than what True Value had to do. Am I correct?
Well, I don't know about that, but the CDOT did not want a open cut. So
gotcha. Okay.
Ripping it up, then putting it back and then resurfacing the highway. They wanted it bored underneath the highway to not impede traffic flows of a busy highway like Highway 24.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did at True Value. They bored underneath the highway.
Interesting.
Any other questions? Go ahead, guys.
All right, with that, I'll introduce Rick Goncalves. He is our consultant engineer with RG, and he is the engineer who put together the base water model that we have for discussion purposes tonight. So with that, I'll introduce Rick and turn over to him, and I'll pull up the map of the water model that he has put together.
Everybody hear me okay? I'm unmuted.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Glad to meet with you all again tonight, although this is the first time I've done this virtually. Always interesting. You're all probably pretty used to it by now. So we, as Mark was saying, oh, Mark, can you get me control of the cursor so I can do some pointing?
Unfortunately, I can't, but you tell me where to point, I'll get you there.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about the streets and such. As Mark said earlier, really the interest in this area started with the O'Reilly's service and the desire. Their first thought was to connect to the water under the highway. And of course, being the state highway newly paved and newly rebuilt, a bore would be the only way to cross that. As we said earlier, there's concern, not only concern with the boulders. We've had a lot of bad experience with boulders just over in Arkansas, Pinion, and you just see the size of those. It only takes one, but beyond that, the feasibility of doing that, boring a highway is a very expensive proposition. And then the first thought was, well, is there an alternate way to do that? We said, well, yeah, we can connect into Crossman right there at Pleasant, and they could run a line north. But the problem there is that it requires an easement across other people's property. And all of a sudden now a singular use was starting to develop into multi-use. If you're going to run a line up there, you're going to put an easement, then what size does that line be? Who's it going to serve besides just O'Reilly's? And that's where the thinking got to be of, well, what size should that line be if it's going to be for anyone more than just O'Reilly's? So, and then the thinking there too is that line that Mark's pointing out from Crossman up to O'Reilly's, whether it's an 8 or a 12, can easily be way less expensive than trying to bore the highway, even if you're successful at getting it through. So that got to thinking, so not just O'Reilly's, we need to start thinking about some of these other properties, which is the BV earnings, I guess, was talking about developing. And then there's some talk about the other properties and the other parts on the west side. So how are we going to take care of those properties? And we're looking at O'Reilly's and we're very close to Crossman. What about the rest of the properties? So the first thing we saw, well, first of all, we did model whether O'Reilly's could cross the highway with an 8-inch line, which would be the minimum size. And if that line being an 8-inch would serve O'Reilly's just by itself with fire flow and its maximum day flows. Yes, it can. We also then modeled coming up from Crossman on Pleasant Extended, same thing. Can O'Reilly's be served through a singular line that way? And if it's an 8-inch line, yes, it could. But if you're going to put a line there, why do we want just to serve O'Reilly's? We need to be thinking about other uses. So then stepping back and looking at the entire area globally, the first thing that becomes evident is there's no water in that area. We have Crossman's on the south that you saw, which is all a 6-inch main. We have the 12-inch main on the east side of the highway. And then we have the main in Harrison coming down past True Value, right to the north of the Crossman's addition. It's pretty evident that that's a large area that it's going to need to close the loop between Harrison up there at the north and Crossman at the south. So with that, then we decided to, first of all, model the area, see what would be required. And we did some spot checks. For example, up in the northwest corner there, anything to develop there that would just want to attach itself and connect to the line in Harrison. We ran the model and found that that's not possible. You can't put a fire flow at the end of that dead end line and have any pressure at all. So anything in the north is going to have to be connected. It's going to have to be looped, as we're saying, through the addition. So then we looked at is how do you close the loop? What's the best way to close that? We looked at 3 basic options. And keep in mind, these are all alternatives, they're ideas, they're not hard based in requirements because there's many ways to skin the cat. So we looked at least 3 alternatives. The first one that seems most obvious is come straight down from the north at Harrison and just come all the way down Harrison connecting to Crossman. We ran that. Given that the town's requirements, there's no water line should be less than 8 inches. We just ran that line, closed the loop, and then we took all of the originally platted lots as density and figured the maximum day flow from those lots and applied them at each of the points where you see the pressure there, each of those points along the lines on down to Crossman for that option, and assumed connections would be made there to distribute the flow from that loop line out to all the areas of the development. And that would be done with those 8-inch feeder lines. So we have that option. The other option we looked at was if we really did want to let, I shouldn't say let, but if the highway crossing for O'Reilly's was successful, that really was the way that it wanted to get done, then we could make a loop that way, cross the highway, go along O'Reilly's, and then connect into Garfield and right there at the corner, run the line along what would need to be an easement, as Mark showed earlier. And then that would be follow the same line up Lane, over on Grant, and then up Harrison. So that was one option. Then the second one, again, centering on O'Reilly's and the activity in that corner, was to connect the line at Pleasant, which was a better idea in terms of there's an 8-inch line in Pleasant. So connecting there, that was a reasonable option. And then the third option was to connect in Crossman at Harrison and run straight north. So we ran those, again, with all the demands, the water demands for the entire area feeding in to that loop line. And we found that of those 3 options, that the option that we're looking at right now was the best in terms of water pressures. When we ran fire flows, and the worst or the governing condition for running a fire flow of 1,500 gallons a minute was at the intersection of Lincoln and Harrison. When we ran the fire flow at that worst case, at that point, for all of the alternatives, we had the best pressure, residual pressure left at that spot. So it's best by about 4 to 5 PSI. One of the things we were modeling is that with all of our alternatives and investigation, we didn't want the residual pressure anywhere in the system up there to be lower than 20 PSI. That's the common accepted low pressure. Anything lower than that, you have a chance of collapsing lines and causing real problems. So that ended up being the best alternative from that standpoint. The next thing we did is we recognized that if you were to go in here and just put 8-inch lines everywhere just to start with, and then start developing, you wouldn't know what to do. That became evident with O'Reilly's. So we took about 17 different ways of looking at the there, and naturally, if you start at the south end and near Crossman, if you go to the southwest corner, for example, so that's if we run an 8-inch line, connect to Crossman, run an 8-inch line up to that property, can we serve it, given all the demands feeding out of that, surrounding that intersection of roughly Garfield and Harrison? Can we serve that with an 8-inch line? So, well, yes, an 8-inch line would work there. So what if the development was centering around Grant and Harrison? We modeled that, took the water demands, and we found that you can't serve that area with a single 8-inch line from Crossman north to that intersection. Therefore, that would have to be a 12. And we did, like I said, various 17 different options on the way the development might occur spontaneously and in spots, in spotted areas. One of the key ones we looked at, I think I talked about earlier, was at the northwest corner there. It needs to have a feed line from the south, because connecting just to the dead end up in Harrison, we would not have anywhere near the 20 PSI residual. So we looked at running south, and you could run a 12-inch line all the way down to Crossman. That would work, and that happened to be the one of the alternatives. We did the same thing over with the BV earnings property, and ran those scenarios with 8-inch and 12-inch lines, and we found that this configuration of a main feed line works the best for certain given methods of development time schedules. But the main thing is it's only a concept. The concept that we need is we need a larger line than 8-inch connecting from Crossman up to Harrison. There's a number of different ways you could do it. In this idea, we don't have to go straight north out of Pleasant and then go through the easement that would be necessary in Garfield, we come straight south from Blaine and Grant and come all the way down to Crossman. That's an alternative. That would work as well. That would need to be a 12-inch as well. And so those variations of this alternative are purely workable. Everyone developing in the area there. The main thing is that we need to have a strong feeder line, and then different alternatives can work as development needs water. If someone up in the corner of Lincoln and Blaine wants to start developing right away and wants a water line right away, well, they have a concept. They can run up the blue line like we've shown, and then you can run an 8-inch line up north, and they've got their water. So that's really what we looked at. There's been some just today, as a matter of fact, some mention that, well, a 10-inch line could work just as well as a 12-inch. Yeah, that I can't say that it absolutely will work. We haven't checked it, but it appears like it could work. Again, what's clear is that just an 8-inch line is not going to work to close that loop. 10-inch line might work. A 12-inch line is very little difference. In fact, sometimes we've had opportunities where 12-inch lines have actually been cheaper than 10-inch because nobody really uses 10-inch lines anymore. But that's an alternative. And I think the important fact here is to remember is that this is a concept of what can be done, and it can be modified to fit the developments in the various exits out of the starting gate, I guess, or in their time schedules for development. The thing to do is when the development is getting hot and heavy, like with O'Reilly's, is to work with the concept. If they're dead set on crossing the highway, well, we can show how that can work and work that out. The key on all this too is when, for instance, development up in the northwest corner is developing, they're going to have to run the feed line, the main feed line, up through there so they can have adequate pressure. They are fairly singular in developing, farther ahead than everybody else. Then an option would be to instead of following the 12-inch the way it's showing here, is to go ahead and make the main feed line go straight south to Crossroads. It'd be less line to put in for that, and it would still serve as the main feed line. Then what's left over, what's currently shown as the blue 12-inch line, that could revert back to an 8-inch line for subsequent developers to come in like BV earnings. So this is basically a concept and is subject to a lot of working with the developers on how best serving them with water can work, and not only work for them, but we need to always make sure that if we're going to run a line up from Crossman, it's got to be able to work to serve others and fit into the mold of having closing the loop with a main feed line. And I think that is, there has been some, I'll mention, there's talk in Crossman that, well, why would we connect to anywhere in Crossman? It's only a 6-inch water line. And there are thoughts out there that if you have a 6-inch water line, it doesn't do any good to connect a 12-inch water line.
Oh,
You don't get as much water through a 6-inch as will go, and you can't get any more out of a 12-inch. That is not a true statement, especially for what happens there is we're dealing with pressures. So we're connecting into a 6-inch line in Crossman. So with the fire flows, for example, if we were to connect at Crossman and Harrison, running up there, one of the reasons why an 8-inch doesn't work and a 12-inch does is because the combination of the head loss in the 6-inch line in Crossman is just too much, and then add just a little bit more head loss from the 8-inch, it doesn't work. The 12-inch has even less head loss, so it can provide the pressure and a less pressure drop by benefit of its size. There's been talk about, well, since 6 inches is too small, which it isn't, as we have shown, but why don't we dig it up and replace it with a 12-inch? Well, if you think about that, you can do that, but the cost of that, you have a line there that is functional and it's not causing problems. If you put a 12-inch there or even an 8-inch, you're still going to need to close that loop. Maybe you can close the loop with an 8-inch, but then you've taken out a perfectly good line and replaced it, and then you still have to put lines up in the other streets along the alignment of the feed line. So you're really paying twice and not taking advantage of what's there, and it does work. If it were a 4-inch, it wouldn't work, but a 6-inch will work. Again, those are alternatives. I mean, this is a basic concept and can be altered a number of different ways.
Any questions?
I mean, you go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, let me just interject real quick. I think just to kind of clarify what the intention of for tonight, this discussion, it's a pretty technical, obviously pretty complex and can be pretty technical outlook. The real intention is we're not looking for the board to approve or adopt anything formal with this. The intention of this is not for town to construct this, nor is it to force the property owners to start constructing this right away. This is a concept, as Rick pointed out. And what staff has experienced over the last few years is when you start having these situations where the properties that need infrastructure start to get dispersed, you have multiple owners, it takes collaboration between those owners. And we saw success with that over at Pinion and Belden. But that took a lot of effort and awareness by the people that own those properties. And so staff has been engaged in a number of pre-application discussions, as Mark mentioned. And those are fun and exciting conversations with people that are very excited about trying to develop out there, but they're looking at just a specific piece. And so it's a very hard, complex discussion to say, well, part of a broader picture. And so this is town just trying to be proactive in drawing awareness to the public, the current property owners, potential new property owners, just saying, hey, there's a broader picture here to consider. And, ultimately, there's a lot of ways to do this, as Rick mentioned. And so Really, we're not looking for any formal action from the board, just awareness that this is this is an ideal location for development for town. There's commercial, there's residential. So I think it's something we would like to see developed, but there are complexities. So it's more of an awareness.
I think this is great that it's being planned because clearly it's infill development and it's great to spend, it's probably going to take a few years of planning and organizing and working with the people. So I think it's great. Thanks for the update.
And Mark, you said you had got a recent document from another engineering or something, am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct. We received an email from the property owner for BB Holdings as late as 4 o'clock today. So I think it got in shortly before 4. So obviously, I think they also know that they have interest and they're very much interested in getting those properties to a point where they can be developed. And so it is going to take an effort of the 12 property owners that are in that area that are going to have to work together. And if these properties are sold off to other property owners, you're going to start to add to the number of people who are going to have to participate.
So an awareness, basically.
Yeah, and I anticipate
Work in progress, basically.
Yes, and I anticipate that we will probably have some discussions with these property owners and their engineers about options that not only provide water for their particular developments, but also work to meet the town's needs to be able to provide water to everybody. We're not gonna be trying to put a water line that just serves one property owner and skips another property owner.
Any other questions, trustees? Thank you for the update, guys. We'll be looking to hear more from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's an ordinance amending Chapter 15 of the Bunavista Municipal Code, adoption of ordinance number 6, 2021, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Article 1 of Chapter 15 of the Bunavista Municipal Code regarding annexation. Is this Mark again?
Be Joel.
Joel.
Hey, it's me. Thanks, everybody. So this is a partial cleanup and partial change. Thank you all. This is a public hearing, so I'll give you a little brief update and then do what the public hearing says. So there are two things. One, when we had a request about an annexation, as you all are aware of, and then we also passed this water dedication fee. And so on March 21st, so or 23rd, anyway, as we were visiting all of this, we noticed that the current annexation process doesn't completely conform with Colorado Municipal Annexation Act of 1965. So we need some changes to that. Additionally, we were able to note the actual process and some of the arduous nature of the current process, and the passage of that water dedication fee helped relieve some of that. And so conceptually, the process for an annexation would be a little bit different in that, the current process, if we, before this amendment here, would be someone would come, ask about annexation, and then do pretty heavy engineering on potential land use to determine what how many houses or commercial properties, et cetera, would go onto that property. We would calculate a cash in lieu for water rights. We would look at, all the nuances of the subdivision, road widths, drainage, all of these things. And then they'd pay a heavy upfront cash in lieu of annexation fee, and then, presumably it would annex and do a zone change and things. And so It takes a heck of a lot of staff time. And with this water dedication fee, we saw an opportunity here where we could adjust some of the process for annexation. Where someone inquires about annexation, we know a potential impact of, we could talk through their plans, et cetera. Some people might be really specific about the plans, some people might not, but there's not a need for the staff to really get into all the engineering and pay that upfront cost, nor for the applicant to sink a lot of money in there without knowing whether or not they could be annexed at all. But it's an opportunity where they can come into town with there would be an annexation impact fee that would still be placed upon the property, and that can be any number of different things, as is in the fee, explained in the fee schedule later on this evening. But it can be any number of different things: traffic, maintenance, could be water, could be any number of different things. There would also be a master development plan that would be part of the annexation agreement, and that could stipulate any kind of things that the town would like to run with that property. For example, a maximum SFE count, maximum heights, minimum heights, setback requirements, open space requirements, things that would be beyond what the normal zoning for a subdivision would allow. It could be whatever it is. And then if that property owner at any point at this time of subdivision, that is when they would pay that water dedication fee. And so if that water dedication fee were to go up over time from year to year to year, they would pay that amount at the time of subdivision. They also, if something happened and they had planned on 100 units and then they decided to do 10, they have not, we're not obligating 100 SFEs of water to that property and holding it there. So it doesn't take our water out of the inventory. We still get the same cash in lieu for water rights, but it's via the water dedication fee. And then we also have any kind of other annexation impact fee. So it makes the process a lot smoother, and it makes it, it takes a lot of burden off of town staff and other upfront costs. So that's kind of the two parts. The one is really, let's comply with the Annexation Act, and also it allows us this greater flexibility on the upfront, and then not holding our water to a particular subdivision. And also if they pay annex now and they pay whatever the going rate is, but then they subdivide in 20 years, well, they're paying whatever that rate is in 20 years for that water. There's also, of course, an allowance for cash in lieu of water rights dedication as the preference, and that's according to trustees' desires. So the request would be to make a motion to approve or deny, or approve with amendments, or continue.
Thank you, Joel. Or do you have any trustees, any clarifying questions for Joel at this point, or staff? Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks. I think that 15-3 item B on page, was it 103? Is that what's triggering? So normally the water was upfront, money was paid up front for water, and now we paid with the impact fee. So is that what's not looking at being paid upfront? I think in your report, you mentioned that it will change, so there's not a large lump sum of money up front.
Jeff, you can comment on that maybe. Should we charge to?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the exact language.
Let me see what the.
And so 15B basically just deals with property owners that join a petition. So you typically have like a petition filed by a landowner that wants to annex, and sometimes other property owners are able to join if they're, so that doesn't necessarily relate to that issue. The way that would work is the town, with an annexation, the town generally has full discretion whether to annex or not. And then we would basically address all the fees and those types of matters in the annexation agreement. And then it would basically be included in the agreement itself and be a condition of the annexation. And then Judge Joel says our fee schedule contemplates that the charges could be basically assessed after annexation upon development, building permits, certain triggers, or the town would have the ability to require payments upon annexation.
Yeah, I guess my question for you guys is, do you think it loses, were you concerned that it would lose almost like bargaining ability if someone doesn't have to pay this lump fee up front? Are we foregoing kind of an advantage in a negotiation or no?
I don't think so. I think because we now have a water dedication schedule, fee schedule, and or dedication of water rights, that's laid out for all future development. So that will be there regardless.
Okay.
The other component of this is item C, which the town can assess other aspects of the proposed annexation and impose an additional fee for impact. So I actually think it gives the town more flexibility and more leverage to say the water is going to be taken care of through the actual development, the subdivision and the development. That will be taken care of. Are there other aspects that we need to consider? It could be additional impacts to water as well. It doesn't exclude water from being assessed as part of this other impact fee.
It's just not all up front because it doesn't need to be.
Right, because that will stifle development to put it all up front.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's such a big change. So thank you for explaining that. And I think the only small thing I would maybe recommend as an amendment is in 15-1A, maybe it's worthwhile to reference the Chaffey County Comp Plan. There's so much great information about Buena Vista as a sub, so maybe that could be helpful. But that's a little thing, but looks great. Thanks for answering all my questions.
Yeah, and Amy, one other, to go along with what Philip was saying, absolutely, we can say we need wet water instead of anything or in addition to. And then that fee, that little clause we were just reading that we can impose any fees, it's really carte blanche of what that is. So.
Because ultimately annexation is a legislative act and you basically can impose any conditions you want on it. I think that the fee schedule and the way that water fees in lieu get paid just provides the town with another option.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Jeff, while you're on, clarification, I guess for me, if nothing else, why is this a public hearing?
Great question.
What are we changing that it makes it a public hearing?
I didn't raise the issue. It doesn't have to be a public hearing.
Okay.
Basically, when you're changing most of your municipal code, you can just do it via ordinance at a meeting without a public hearing. But because it was set, there's no harm. And maybe staff had the thought that they wanted to get additional public comment, which is totally fine. This doesn't have to be one.
Okay, that's all. It just struck me as we've done this before without public hearing, and I was just kind of going, why is this one? So it's all Joel's fault, really.
Hey, I asked somebody, I won't say who, but I asked somebody.
I actually saw it on the agenda today, and I had a conversation, and so bottom line is it's not necessary, but it doesn't hurt.
Hey, it's a public hearing right now, by golly. Any other questions for staff? Clarifying questions? Okay, I open this public hearing up to public comment. If there's anybody out there who would like to has a question or comment, please raise your hand. *9 if you're on your phone. Looks quiet.
Indeed.
Yep. Anybody? Close this portion of the public hearing. Any other clarifying questions for staff? Nope. Okay, I close that portion of the public hearing. Trustees? Motion to approve? Motion to approve with amendments?
Would you guys be okay with including the Chaffey County comp plan in there, or you guys would just rather keep it how it is?
My question for that is when the comp plan changes, this changes. If that makes sense. If you tie it to another document, go ahead.
Mayor, if I may, so there might be instances where the town's comprehensive plan is different than the county's. So that is potentially a spot that might cause some heartburn. So I think referring to just the
Let
town.
me open up this portion of the public hearing. Staff, comment.
Maybe just a proposal. We could maybe wrap it into a whereas and say at the time of this ordinance, the Chaffey County comp plan, you know, if you wanted to reference it at a point in time as opposed to in the code. Because I think that's the concern, is if we put it in the code, Chaffey County comp plan could change and it might.
And it changes
different. So.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, that's what I would see.
And I would,
That's what I hate about tying certain things to certain other things, because then you're locked in.
no problem. I would move to approve.
Let me.
Oh,
close
we have to
public hearing.
close.
And so
Sorry.
we, trustees? Go ahead.
Okay, it's close. Okay, now I can speak. Could I motion to approve? Let's see, are we on ordinance? The ordinance amending chapter 15 of the municipal code.
So we're looking.
Adoption of move to approve ordinance number 6, series 21.
Thank you.
Sorry, thanks.
Second, Faye, further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Extine?
Yes.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Rowe?
Yes.
Trustee Swisher?
Yes.
Trustee Volpe?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is adoption of resolution number 2023, series 2021. Resolution of the town of Bunavista issuing a notice of award and entering into an agreement with JVA Consulting Engineering for the town of Bunavista water treatment plant design and capacity expansion project. Gotta be Sean.
You got it.
All right, Sean.
Hey, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, trustees. Can you hear me okay?
You bet.
Yes.
Great. So this is kind of round 2 from the RFQ candidate list that we had on the table early in 2021. So these are all 3 qualified candidates that moved forward into the RFP process by being, awarded this opportunity to give us proposals based on the RFQ requirements. And before I get too far ahead, I just wanted to say thanks for the review teams that have helped with this. Staff, our water operator, our consultant, engineering consultant on this project, Al Smith, and a big thanks to the Water Advisory Board, their diversity and what they can help us with has been recognized. And with this project, the level of importance and the impact that it's inevitably going to have on our water and our community is really much appreciated. And having said that, I'll go ahead and move into the report for resolution 23. So before I get into the meat of the recommendation, I just wanted to go through the scope for this RFP. So what it covered in. So we're recommending moving in with a fee-based proposal from JVA Consulting Engineers. And while we get into that, I just wanted to share with the trustees what this RFP captured. So the There's three major components to it that we had. And the scope of the project for this is really getting into a pilot study, which is going to determine the feasibility for the treatment design that we're hoping to move forward with. And so that's analyzing both the gallery water and the Cottonwood Creek surface water. That was it's going to be really important as to the treatment techniques or the design techniques or how we're able to utilize that water. So all three firms that made it into this phase were amazing. You know, qualified statements kind of brought them into this, and they all presented really, really good information and a really good, thoughtful approach, and truly do meet our needs. It's going to be, you know, easiest thing I ever did and the hardest thing I ever did, because they're all qualified to perform this project well. Anyway, so I'll stay on track. So just a little bit of information, you know, on the pilot study. The town desires to evaluate the performance of the cartridge filters for treating both infiltration gallery water and Cottonwood Creek surface water. And the pilot test should be conducted to capture the worst case conditions during runoff in June of 2021. The pilot test should also evaluate cartridge filter performance with minimum pre-treatment. And that's about as far as I'll go into that. I think you get the general idea. And, you know, if I keep reading further on, it just kind of identifies what we had captured for the requirements RFP, so that all the proposals were meeting what we were asking for. B was a preliminary design, and we were asking the consultants to complete a preliminary design for the project that would properly scope and stage the various aspects of this project. And the consultant shall conduct a minimum of 3 review meetings with the town and so on. So we're not quite designing the plant yet. So we won't be talking about some of the amenities and things like that. What we're really trying to do is design the plant to meet the pilot study information that will be presented after that's complete. And then the SRF projects needs assessment. So similar to the 2018 projects that we did, where we constructed a new storage tank and installed new water mains and converted well 3. It's the same similar process. So likely using SRF funding, but maybe other alternatives might be available as well. So that was also captured in the scope. And so I can move into the analysis. So the 3 engineering consultants selected through the request for qualifications provided the town proposals for this water plant expansion project scope. And we got some really good feedback from the Water Advisory Board, and we were able to work with some of their observations that helped staff kind of determine this. And table 1 kind of showed a comparison in hours per phase, and you can see JBA in bold is the recommendation at this time, and Plummer, Roaring Fork Engineering, and Carollo. So if you look at the project management and planning hours, you can kind of see what each consultant had in that as far as hours. So JBA with 42, Plummer with 29, Roaring Fork and Carollo with 200. The pilot study phase, 316 hours for JBA, 231, 236 with Roaring Fork. Preliminary design, 204, 248, 226, and so on. So you can kind of get an idea. That's their projected hours for each phase of this proposal. And then you have the total hours on the far right. The next table below that showed the costs based on each phase 2 as well. And so the hours, looking at the hours and looking down below that into the monetary amounts, you see where there's where they're landing with their projected cost, and JBA at 6,000 for project management planning, and Plummer with 5,630. And Carollo, being that they had a lot of hours in their project management, they were pretty high in that category. all pretty similar and all pretty close otherwise, all the way down. And kind of look at the total engineering fees on the far right as well. So some of the easy observations and some of the things that stood out for the review, myself and the other review, Al, and the water advisory boards. These are kind of the ones that kind of stuck out because they're all so close and they're all so talented. And you know, like I said, any one of them could do this job. So it really kind of got down to, you know, kind of the subtleties to what everybody was providing us as far as for their package that they sent the town to review. And ultimately, it just kind of came down to, you know, JVA's proposal that kind of had emphasized a lengthier pilot study and a pretty great design for the pilot plan layout concept. They provided staff with some detailed drawings showing how that pilot plan would be constructed or possibly constructed. But I think the big thing was, given that we have this you know, surface water that is fairly has a lot of physical characteristics that can change, you know, microbursts, rainstorms, runoff, and things like that, mudslides. Really, we all pretty much landed on the length of the pilot study being kind of the deciding factor for this award. I could say that, you know, they're all very well qualified, and I really can't thank them all enough for putting the time and effort into this project. Corello and Roaring Fork and Plummer, as well as JVA, they went all out on this, and you know, kind of circling back around to, you know, building this and the way we've approached this for success. I really like the way we landed there, and it's unfortunate we can't use them all because they're all qualified to do it, but staff's recommendation is going to be to recommend the notice of award to JVA Consulting Engineers. The engineer's report came late, so it's on page 3 in the paper copies that I left you guys there. I didn't have enough time. It didn't come early enough to get it into the BOT packet, so I apologize for that, but I just wanted to kind of share with you some of Al's thoughts on that as well. Anyways, if you have any questions, I can answer them, hopefully.
What is SRF?
Sorry, State Revolving Fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a funding source for us for these large water projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, trustees? Bill, or excuse me, Norm.
Yeah, do you know who the local resident for JVA is on the project team?
I don't know him personally, no.
Have you heard of him?
I have not heard of him.
Okay.
Is that good or bad? I don't know. Just a question. Any other questions?
Yeah, it was neat to see in their project team, you know, one of their identified project staff based in Bunavista. I think it could offer some benefit.
So, question on the table, if there are no more questions for Sean, resolution number 23. Approve, deny?
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 23.
Thank you, Norm.
I'll second that.
Second, Fay. Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, trustees.
Next item on the agenda is a proposed changes to the 2021 fee schedule. Looks like Philip's on.
Looks like it's me. All right, so page 111 in your packet. It's a memo related to changes we're bringing forward to the 2021 fee schedule. There's 3 basic changes that we're looking at. A couple that are related to liquor licensing that our town clerk proposed. This had to deal with change in ownership, change of management, which requires staff time to process those things. So we want to have an associated fee. The next came from our police department, which had to do with how we address civil standbys, which are essentially requests from people within the community to have a police presence for civil domestic situations. And we're seeing more of those demands or those requests at times. So Chief Morgan worked with Jeff to kind of talk through how town should best handle that. And part of that response is to, 1, set a fee so that the town is recouping the cost of putting an officer in those situations, and 2, developing an SOP that our police department can follow for how we take those requests and assess whether we have appropriate personnel time, so on. So it's something that has to be scheduled based on our availability, but there's a fee associated with that. And then the third has to do with the new water dedication fees and language around the annexation impact fee that related to what the board passed tonight. So you can see the details of all of that in the attached amended fee schedule. And we scroll down here, it's in red. Hopefully I won't zip past it.
Way down there, man.
There we go. So a couple of fees related to liquor licensing. And then we have the civil standby, $60 per hour, and then a kind of a description pointing back to how people interact with the police department and an SOP that kind of drives that process. And then the meat of this is down in the water section, which is a whole new section related to water rights, payment in lieu, dedication fee. So this is the code that the board has already adopted. And this is the initial rate structure that staff came up with. We realized that these are new fees to our community, to the development and building community. And so we wanted to sort of ease into this as best we can. So we roughly based it on the existing fees that we had for system improvement fees, or our TAP fees, which pay for infrastructure side of things. We sort of used a 2/3 of those fee kind of guideline, and the water master planning effort that has been kicked off following that will be a rate study, which will help us further refine these fees. But we also did calculation based on what we know the projects ahead of us are in terms of the water acquisition that we just did, the cost of what that could be in the future, storage projects and well projects, and then the conversion of water rights through court, all kind of played into how can we support those size of projects with fees like this, based on the amount of development we're seeing now. So there's definitely some math involved with that. We're not just guessing at these fees. So we structured it looking at the typical sizes for residential single family. Then we also looked at residential multifamily, and you can see there's different methodology for that. The residential single family is based on meter size. Multifamily, which we definitely want to see more of, we're looking at it per unit as opposed to the size of the meter, because the meter could be various sizes for those types of projects, both small and large multifamily. Then we get into how we look at non-residential and mixed use, which again is kind of based on meter size and the anticipated water usage, because we could get small commercial situations where it's retail and that's going to be pretty minimal in terms of water usage, or we could get another brewery. So there's some flexibility in here, kind of looking at what the actual water usage could be. There's also a section in here that would give us the ability to look at irrigation. And these would be larger irrigation situations. So the infill lots, typical R1 lots, this wouldn't apply. They would fall under that 79.99 square foot total of irrigated space. But there might be larger situations where we need to be able to assess a water dedication fee for those situations. So that's spelled out in here. We have the section that deals with accessory dwelling units. And the way you read that is two scenarios that we see ADUs. One is adding to an existing primary dwelling, and or a brand new construction where you have a new house, new primary dwelling, and new ADU. So both of those use cases are taken into consideration. And the way to look at that is typically an ADU will push the size of the meter requirement of a primary residence up. So a single family home could typically be 3/4 inch meter. An ADU will push that up to a 1 inch typically. So there's language in our code that the board adopted that talks about a waiver if people are looking to use the ADU for a minimum of 3 years for long-term rental only. And so that waiver would apply to that difference in the cost between a 3/4 inch and a 1 inch line. Water rights dedication, again, this just outlines that the board, current board, future boards may desire wet water as opposed to a water dedication fee. So it just explains that. That's very important because that will vary over time. What we see is the most important need. And then the annexation impact fee, which again is a clarification, kind of reflecting the new code that was passed tonight, which basically says that the Board of Trustees at their discretion can come up with an overall impact fee for an annexation, because not all annexations are the same. So that is a whole lot. We can definitely dive in and take questions. We did remove the old water rights payment in lieu dedication fee tied to annexation, because now our code refers only to this water dedication section. So I will stop there and take questions.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Cindy.
It is on page 125, and it's just a question because I don't understand. Residential multifamily. A small multifamily is more expensive than a large multifamily?
Yes, so good question, Trustee Swisher. So typically small multifamily, which is defined as four units or less, they typically are using more water because those structures tend to have yards, small yards, courtyards, and they tend to be a little bit larger as opposed to the larger multifamily, which is typically just the unit as opposed to unit plus a yard. So it's not exactly perfect, but that's the reason why that fee is a little bit higher.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, you had something?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. On page 125, I'm going to reference the impact fee that I don't have open in front of me, and I don't know if people will have this answer right now, but I believe that under non-residential and mixed use, how I read the policy was that 3/4 inch was exempt or waived for commercial properties. That's the only thing I saw. I wasn't quite sure if someone was maybe able to check into that and get back to me. That would be awesome. And then the second thing is, I'm looking at the impact fee for non-residential and mixed use, which makes sense, of course, for a high demand water. But as we know, residential is what is causing, is really having the impact on our water situation. So I wouldn't want something like that to discourage business. And I'm concerned something like that would be. So perhaps I don't think anything needs to be changed now. Maybe we can think about it and revisit it during the fee schedule, was my thoughts on that.
Any other questions, trustees? Thank you, Philip.
Yep. Joel, did you have something? Clarification?
I just Amy, when you were saying that business, a 3/4 inch business wasn't part of it or was waived, did you mean in the code language that was approved in the water dedication fee?
The water dedication fee, yep. There's a section in that where it says when it's mixed use, something is waived if it's, I thought it was 3/4 inch or less.
Yeah, the only waiver was related to ADUs. And so they talked about the really that 3/4 or the difference between 3/4 and 1 inch when the ADU is built. But there wasn't another waiver in addition to that.
We can double check that for sure.
Yeah, I think we should double check, but yeah.
And I'll dig back into it too. Thank you.
And trustee,
Any other questions, trustees?
sorry, for clarification on the other part, trustee Eckstein, can you just repeat real quick what you were referencing? Which section was you referencing for?
So
commercial?
for non-residential and mixed use, the between 1.5 inch and
Okay.
6 inch.
Okay. Just want to make sure that's the one I'm, okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion. To approve with amendments, deny.
I will make a motion to approve the fee schedule as written.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'll second.
I'll give a second to Roe. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Eckstein?
Yes.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Rowe?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Volpe?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Next item is administrator's report.
All right. Thank you all. Page 128 of the packet. Hopefully as a larger packet this time. So I'm hoping that you made it to my report. There's quite a bit in there and it's getting a little later. So I'm going to try to be concise here and then take questions. So a few updates. One, you're probably starting to see and read a little bit more about the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARP, the next round of direct relief funding. So I included some of the things that I've learned, staff has learned so far, and getting confirmation on roughly the amount of money and some of the timing. So just to give you some ideas and get you to be aware and start thinking about how we want to go through a process of evaluating how we utilize the next round of relief funding and some of the very high level restrictions and guidelines on how we use this. So just to point out though, the total that we're looking at for the town of Bunavista is $620,000. It would be split into 2 payments. The first payment we would receive this year, and the second payment would be in 2022. And then we do have a longer runway to actually utilize these funds, spend these funds. that's looking like December 31st, 2024. So there's a little less urgency to get the money out of the door, which is nice considering the Treasury is certainly taking their time on the details of this. So, anyway, to be aware that will be an effort and conversation we'll be having in the near future. The next thing, quick update about the Chamber of Commerce. They are continuing with their transition out of the church building. It's a very good meeting with them this week. They're doing a fantastic job taking care of our historic facility. They are probably 3/4 of the way out. And Earl and I met with them, met with Melissa and then Scott Peterson from the Visitors Bureau to just talk about what do we do next, right? Because we have this traditional visitor center, they're vacating in May, what do we do? So it sounds like the Visitors Bureau is going to help us out with a bit of signage, and that signage would be placed behind the building where people typically park and enter the building. That would have a combination of where's the chamber now, where can you go for them, where can you find more information about our area, Visitors Bureau, lodging, trails, all that, with information back to the Visitors Bureau. And then what I would call more just over town related questions. Where do I take my trash? Where do I go take a shower? Where are public restrooms? And so that would be some content on there too. So I think that's what we're going to be working on in the next couple of months. And then staff has started discussions about, okay, what do we want to propose back to the board in terms of what do we do with this facility? And I think we need to take our time. I think it's a good facility, but it does need work. And I don't think we need to rush and get a long-term user in there yet. It does seem to be a facility that we could rent out like we do the community center. However, staff does have concerns about the demand that possibly that would come with that, because it sure looks like a pretty wedding dedication or situation. And our staff's not really crazy about wedding planners. I don't have a wedding planner right now. So good news is it's being left in fantastic condition, and we have a few next steps. But quick update on that.
Sounds great.
Fire service discussions are progressing in a good way. The committee continues to meet, and I think we're coming to some conclusions. So just a heads up to anticipate some discussion with the board late April and early May on that. Dryfield Ditch Farm, the newly acquired water rights and land for the town. Staff had a really, really nice handoff with the previous owner this past week. We spent quite a bit of time out at the property and cleaned out the ditch. It's in good order, and we are actively working with one of the neighbors on formalizing an agreement for management of the irrigation, the cutting and haying for 2021. We're also preparing a policy that we'll bring back to the board for consideration on how we utilize the house as well, because we could sure use that for some situations with transitional staff housing. We also want to be able to utilize it for long-term leasing to help recoup costs for the town. So that will be coming back soon. Highway 24 intersections with Baylor and DePaul, a pretty surprising and exciting meeting checkpoint that we had with the CDOT team recently. They're looking at the potential of constructing a transportation station there right off County Road 317. And that would be kind of a combination of park and ride and the Mustang service. Obviously, there's questions and discussion that needs to happen about who would maintain such a facility. We've expressed to them that that's not necessarily something that our board has said that they want to take on at this point. But there's a lot of momentum, it seems, behind getting some public transportation in this part of the county. So we're going to roll with that and see how that progresses, because that is going to help move up the funding prioritization for the actual intersection improvements that we're really after. So CDOT is looking to lead the design part of this project, which we are more than happy for them to take, because we do not have the real capacity to handle that. We did budget $60,000 in our 2021 budget towards that effort. So CDOT will be kicking in the majority of the funding, and they will be drafting an IGA that we'll be bringing back to the board for consideration on kicking off that effort in the second half of this year.
Philip, are they looking at putting that in the little triangle there? Let's say that's adjacent to the highway. Is that what they're talking about on the east side?
Yes, correct. That currently CPW owns. So they have to work with CPW on that.
Okay, because the big CPW is on the other side, and then the little sliver goes down.
They're looking at the little sliver.
Is that about just building a facility or a place like that, or also a stoplight or something?
Both.
Both.
Okay. And just this is one I know that the board has brought up. Staff recognized it as well, and we had some timely correspondence with Envision Chaffee County. I won't speak too much about this, but because they'll be coming back to you all in May to share what the plans are to help address some of the impacts we're seeing around us, especially in 4 Mile with dispersed camping and campfires and so on. So I know that was important to the board. So we're excited to see some progress there. And finally, we had a checkpoint meeting with the Boys and Girls Club on their facility project over behind Newbies next to the elementary school. They are moving forward with their architecture design concepts, and we'll be meeting with staff. Now it's going to be early May, but we also reviewed the letter of intent, which I've been telling you all we're trying to get back to you. It's really waiting on them to propose a couple of adjustments. They like it, but there's definitely some excitement and momentum, and so they will be back this summer to kind of show what the designs look like to you all. And then we'll look at that letter of intent so we can get some of that in writing. So that concludes my report. And I said I'd be brief and I wasn't. I apologize.
Questions for Philip? Thank you, Philip. The intersection sounds good. Bumps it clear up there quick.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor, Trustees. My report is showing on the screen right now. It's on page, looks like it's 130 of the packet. And a real short report, URL for the transparency website and where the budget can be located. Quick summary of the accounts payable transactions and the payroll for the period since our last meeting, and expenditures over 2,000 below that. And couple of things. The audit has been postponed. The field work for the audit has been postponed to the last week in April due to the snowstorm and everything. They couldn't get here when scheduled. And then because of a family emergency, which brought me to Florida until Friday, we decided to reschedule it for the last week in April. So that is still ongoing. But I'm sending all the things that they need, that they don't have to be on site to verify. And I wanted to give a shout out to Lillian, because being her first board meeting that she's had to take minutes for and everything, she got kind of trial by fire. And so I think she's doing an awesome job. And we love Lillian.
Good job.
Lillian's great. The budget book is amazing. I just want to put that out there. The electronic budget book, I was riveted. I spent Friday night reading it. It's so good. So thanks to Philip and Michelle for posting that. I'm sure it was very tedious, but I think it will serve the community well. So I want to say thank you guys for that.
Wow, I read a Friday night read.
I know, it's riveting.
Any other questions for Michelle? Comments? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Next is Dean, Police Chief Report.
Hey, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and see me.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just go through this really quick. Got a couple pictures in there. Some of you may have noticed we have some new graphics on a couple of our police cars. Sergeant Garcia designed those and went through a local business. Part of the reasoning, as it says in the report, is these are reflective, and that'll help us with accreditation down the road. We've been getting lots of compliments on it. And with us having 4 cars coming this year, we figured now was a good time to do it so we could kind of start that changeover. Sergeant Adair, our canine officer, has been going down to the Springs for his canine recertification on Thor. He has to recertify on his bite and drug skills, and he passed with a Patrol 2 rating, which I guess is the highest rating, so we're pretty excited about that. We've been meeting with the rec department. We're excited for summer. We're gearing up for that. It sounds like there's going to be quite a few events, and it's going to be a good time. I just finished the ICS 400 course on incident command, which was super exciting. Officer Brito just completed a patrol rifle course, and he's at a pistol instructor course this week. And the importance of that is those are skills he can bring back to the department and cross-train officers on that. So that's really important. Judy Nyberg and Melissa Goodwin, our administrative assistants, just completed their recertification and certification on records management. And mentioning our administrative assistants, I just wanted to mention that April 21st is Administrative Assistant Day. And it is the administrative assistants, I believe, that make the town go around. So we definitely want to acknowledge the people that do that in Buena Vista, because they're a huge part of our team. The 16th, it says April, is actually March 16th. I was able to talk to Ms. Snegley's forensics class about arson investigation, which was really fun. So thanks to Ms. Snegley for inviting me to do that. April 2nd was National Autism Awareness Day, and April is Autism Awareness Month. And I want to thank Officer DiGirolamo, our school resource officer, for bringing attention to that and setting up a really awesome interaction with Mrs. Keithley's class of special needs students at Avery Parsons. They're called Keithley's Corner. And they came over and they got to look at our patrol cars and ask us questions. And we got to talk to them about how to use 911 and what to do if they get lost. So that was a really great interaction, positive for everybody. Several of our officers attended the CIT, or Crisis Intervention Training, which helps us learn to interact with people in crisis, which can mean a variety of different things. And again, all the credit goes to Megan for setting that up. We want to thank Superintendent Gates and the high school for letting us use their facilities for that. We had agencies from the Front Range also attending, so that was a pretty good training for Buena Vista. Last Board of Trustees meeting, Trustee Rowe asked some questions about what some of the categories meant on those graphs that I submit, reference our calls for service. So there's a little paragraph there giving some clarification on that. If that doesn't answer the questions, please let me know and I'll try to be a little more detailed. On March 30th, Officer Marusars and I were able to attend the funeral for Boulder police officer Eric Talley, who was killed in the line of duty at the shooting at the King Supers in Boulder. So just a shout out to the Boulder Police Department. Very impressed with their handling of all of that. And our thoughts and prayers are with Officer Talley's family. And let's see. Yeah, as I say in my report there, response to active shooter is something we take very seriously. We train on it frequently throughout the year and provide trainings to school and businesses on that type of thing. And that's about it. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Trustees, any questions for Dean? Go ahead, Libby. There you go.
I just think that was a great report. I enjoyed reading it. Thank you for all the hard work that went into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that it was a great report, and thanks for the additional clarification on the other category. And I think it's really awesome to see the officers attending the CIT. I think it's really important to learn more about mental health and people struggling. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Next is Fire Chief report.
Morning, everybody. I mean, good morning. Seems like it's been going all night, right? So, hello, everybody. Just want to say thanks for everybody. I got to step up my report game now for show up. So thanks, Chief. Just a couple of things. The reserve program is still going strong. Of course, with all the works and talks with the county, we're kind of slowing down, bringing on any more people till we know what's going on. We know that that's going to have some impact on the future guys that we bring in. The roof replacement is still on schedule. We haven't heard back from the people whether the materials are in yet. We thought it would be April that we'd be hearing that back. So we'll update you as that progresses through. Lots of training going on. A lot of search and rescue stuff, trying to get into different buildings. It's tough because, we do the schools as much as we can, but trying to get into other buildings is pretty tough. We're through our inspections program, we're learning the buildings, which is a big part of what we do. We got to know the layouts of these buildings. So we're trying to get into as many as we can. We did a refresher a couple of weeks ago, and that turned out really well. A lot more in person and Zoom. It was pretty successful. A lot of people, a lot of really great training. So we got caught up on that. This last weekend, we had an S212 class, which is for wildland side. It's basically you have to be qualified to be able to run a chainsaw and how to, they call it felling trees properly and safely. Usually a tree falling on a firefighter at least once or twice a year kills somebody. So big emphasis on safety and how to do that properly. We have our engine, our newest engine, Engine 8, is still down in Denver. We're going on probably 3 weeks now, I think, that it's been down there. It seems like every time they fix something, they find something else wrong. So it's a frustrating situation. A lot of money's going into it because I don't want to, have a truck come back that's not done and working properly. So hopefully we're looking at next week to getting that back. Doing minor station improvements. We're putting just a fresh coat of paint on the stall areas. It's long overdue. It's the people who have been in there have seen it. The walls are gross inside the stalls. So we're just putting a fresh coat of paint on it, just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. And we also bought a small set of some weights just to kind of keep up our own fitness instead of having to go all the way to the gym, which a lot of guys still do. Love that gym over there, but with COVID, it kind of put, let's make ourselves a little small gym so we don't have to go down there all the time. I love going down to the gym and working out down there. It's really good. So we got that going. For a wildland program, we're up to almost 40 people in the wildland program, which is really great. It's getting to be a big program, and how the direction of this thing with county goes, it's going to be a really great potential for the town. because we have so many people going out. It's a great resource, not just during fire season, but we had people going out during, doing COVID shots and things like that. So it's not just a fire season. They're kind of being able to roll into just the regular jobs, giving vaccines and things like that. That's not related to fire. Doing a lot of training with Chaffee County. We know that relationship is important. So we're continually working with Chaffee County and Chaffee County EMS just to make ourselves better, get our skills up. We don't get the chance to work with those guys very much. So it's a really great opportunity to get together. With Dean, we suffered both through ICS 400. It's a lot of information, a lot of, thank goodness my group had a lot of people who were really, really, really good at what they did or what they do in major incidents. One of our instructors was actually in charge of the evacuation for Katrina, moving something like 26,000 people into the Superdome. I can't imagine that undertaking, but a lot of really great training came out of that. So that was a lot of fun. Burn permits are starting to roll in for town. People wanting to burn their slash, their trimmings and things like that. So that's starting to ramp up. And getting out to Public Works and they have a huge pile of stuff that we're trying to work through. So that's going to start happening pretty soon. So we'll let people know when we're going to have those big burn days. So people aren't freaking out thinking the town's on fire. So we'll let people know. And station tours are picking up. We love having little kids come over, little school kids, and passing out those kind of things. It's a lot of fun. It's so much fun to see kids light up when they see that stuff. So that's all I have. Any other questions for me? I appreciate all you guys do.
Any questions for Chris? Is that really your signature, Chris, or is that computer generated?
No, that's computer generated. That's not mine. I wish it might be that nice.
I just thought I'd ask you. It looked pretty good.
I got the typical doctor signature. I appreciate all you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay. Recreation. Gosh, we couldn't leave out Earl.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. My report is on page 140 in the packet. So we are ramping up, getting ready for a busy summer. We obviously have had some good spring weather until today, but lots of new families coming out and enrolling in programs and just lots of new energy in and around town. So very excited to see what the summer's going to bring. I got a lot of different subject areas here. Philip has covered a couple of them, which is great. I'll just hit some of the highlights. The Boys and Girls Club potential new campus is really exciting for us. It could really provide a need that we've been trying to fill for a long time with some gym space. Their architect's going to come back on May 7th. We're going to give them a tour of all BV rec facilities. See if we can't come up with something special to make that new building very complementary to what we could use to make BV rec more successful. The chamber moving downtown, it's great for them and exciting. We're relieved as a department that we're not rushing into something real quick at St. Rose of Lima, but we know there's great potential down the road. It's a really neat building and a very cool park, so it's got a lot of potential. I was able to meet up with the Sunset Vista group that's newly formed. I have a good point of contact that's a resident there, and she has about 140 people that she converses with in the neighborhood. So we're starting to talk about the park again and bringing them up to speed on what we've done as a town to try to bring a park there over the last 5 years. A lot of Q&A with that group, but excited to work with them in the future. Unfortunately, as you've read in my report, we did not receive our GoCo grant funding for our last try at GoCo's Resilient Communities funds to support 3 big trail projects in town. It was a tough report to get from GOCO, but we ended up calling them and having a really good conversation with our regional representative, and learned a lot. Basically, what he said is we're doing all the right things. It's just extremely competitive out there in the grant world. More and more people asking for more and more money. So we've got some new strategies, and we're ready to come back at the next opportunity. Let's see. Still meeting up every quarter with Salida Parks and Rec. Just really fun to stay in touch with those guys and gals down to the south. And we share a lot of our same efforts with our community and have a lot of our similar ways we need to adapt through COVID. So that's been very productive. The federal relief funding that's coming to town. We're going to try to get a couple key summer positions to help with all the increase in traffic that we have at the river parks. We're designing a junior rec rangers program, someone that could help with trash and recycling and information and helping people to understand how to best act when they're down at the parks. So that's really encouraging potential new position for us. On the capital improvement side, DPCA floors will be redone on June 14th. That's one of our primary indoor facilities. We're going to redo the surface of the floors and paint some new pickleball lines in there. And we're almost finished with our 5-year agreement with them. So when we put our investment in there, we'll make sure we get years of use out of that gym. Softball field lights were scheduled to start tomorrow, but with the snow, we're going to hold off 1 week for our upgrades there to our LED lights. Concerts in the park, just around the corner, starting on Thursdays, June 10th. The first one will be a country and Western theme to kick off the 100th anniversary of the Coogee Peak Stampede. Let's see, working on the McPhelmy Park shade structure, had to get some engineers involved, but that work is almost done. We hope to be done with that project by the end of May. Working in the river for the river park, redoing one of our main features. We had raised money and saved money over the last 3 years. We're doing some engineering and some surveying right in the pocket wave area, so we can get back to that work in the next year or so. We've got to do all of our planning now. Ice rink is still a big conversation. They picked a name now. It's the Miracle Rink of the Rockies. They're excited. One of the gentlemen on the board bought a Zamboni. He's going to donate to the town at some point, but it's not ours now. It's in storage at his facility.
Earl, can you repeat that name?
What words did you just say?
Zamboni.
Oh, is that what you're asking about?
What was the name of the ice?
Miracle.
Oh, yeah.
That?
So this week there was a lot of chatter going around about what to name the potential facility, and they come up with Miracle Rink of the Rockies, and miraclerink.com is an available domain. So, but that's, we still have a lot of planning to do. They're just excited to have a name and start creating some more awareness and raising more funds in the hopes that they can get this going in the next couple of years. Lots of vaccine clinics. Our town is great at supporting those, all departments. Good to see everyone out there. Good camaraderie working together in our vaccine clinics. That's been super fun. April 25th, I sent this out to all department heads, but if Board of Trustee members want to join us, you may have seen a little bit in the paper. It's on the radio and on social media, but keeping Buena. So keeping beautiful. April 25th, 1 to 3. It's a quick meeting downtown. We'll send people out to certain sectors of downtown. They'll go pick up surface trash and bring it back. And then we'll offer everyone a t-shirt for their hard work. We're really excited to see that happen. Let's see, I better start accelerating ahead. I'm sorry, I wrote too much as well. On the event side of things, Ben and I sit on a countywide advisory board for both indoor and outdoor special events. In a nutshell, indoor events right now is at 50% capacity. So that allows people to do some good things indoors with some social distancing. We are still keeping our community center at 20 in the Pinion and 10 in the Aspen until things settle down just a little bit more. So we'll get to a little bit higher capacity soon here. Outdoor special events have no regulations and no state capacity, but Chaffee County is really working hard to come up with some good beta to give event organizers on how to best plan events for this summer. In general, we're not ready to jump into 2019 levels of groups getting together for events, but we want to have a smaller and progressive increase in people throughout the next year. So this is the summer of recovery. We're going to encourage people to keep numbers low. We're not going to put an actual capacity on it and give them a number that they have to work with, but we'd like them to still consider some basic social distancing strategies just to keep people happy and healthy as we get through the summer of 2021. Let's see here. I'll skip ahead. For outdoor athletics, we can do up to 50 people, which leads us into what we can do programming wise. Having great success with our outdoor recreational program opportunities for youth and adults. On the sponsorship program side, wow, we came out of 2020 pretty strong. We have more sponsors than ever. 49 this year is up from 40 from 2020. Which is great. We're just getting all the artwork in. So you'll see some new banners going up at the softball field soon. And t-shirts will have the 2021 sponsors here relatively soon. Lots of new increase for events, but also a lot of traditional events coming back. So we'll see our car show, our 4th of July fireworks display. Gold Rush is talking about coming back, Trans Rockies. So yes, we will be busy, and Ben has done an amazing job keeping our department heads informed of these applications coming in. We have a work session every month where we can do a big Q&A at a roundtable that's been very productive. And finally, on the programming side, it's soccer season, just to show the growth in the amount of new kids and parents in town. Our last record was about 144 kids in soccer. This year we're at 204. So some great growth. Simultaneously, we've started co-ed indoor volleyball and co-ed basketball. When you're indoors, you wear a mask. When you're outdoors, masks are worn whenever possible. And during the end of May or end of the last month, we finished up indoor volleyball. That was open gym and open gym soccer. And now we're starting to plan for early summer opportunities like youth baseball, girls softball, adult softball, adventure camp, swim lessons, and more. So that's it in a nutshell. I skipped a lot of stuff. It's all in the report. Any questions I can answer from the team?
Question for Earl. Thank you, Earl.
Thanks.
We hated to keep you up late. No comment.
At least it was that and not enough.
Yeah, there you go. Good job. That was a good job. Okay, trustee staff. Dean, do you have any more comments?
He dropped.
You dropped.
Send him home.
You sent him home.
Yep.
It's saving $1. Just saying. Sean, do you have anything else? You said, oh, there's Sean.
I'm good, thanks.
Righty, thanks. Chris gone too?
Yep.
Chris is gone. Michelle?
Just wanted to let you guys know that the next meeting, I will be bringing forth the first quarter financial status report. Other than that, I'm good.
Thank you, Michelle. Joel, do you have anything to add for us tonight?
Yeah, just going back to that work session earlier. I know sometimes the decision train can get going pretty good, and there's some pressure from the other folk involved and related to the annexation and moving forward with that. And so I just wanted to make sure that we built in the opportunity to say, without the pressure of them saying, hey, give us a decision now, to see if you guys wanted to visit, have some time to think about it, see if there's any sense to listen or hear and discuss with Cindy or our water engineers, some of that perspective and some of the process. So apologize for kind of butting in and saying, hey, maybe we should do this in a formal meeting if there is a decision to be made, or give you guys a little bit of time outside of that pressure. So anyway, if we want to visit it now or visit it at a different agenda time when you guys can even have more time to think about it, and we can get some more info from Cindy or Trish or whatever you guys want to do, but I want to bring that back up.
Appreciate it, Joel. Trustees, thoughts?
My opinion, I feel like they're being a little pushy.
Yeah.
They're on
How
time.
so?
Well, they're in the timeline, yes, timeline, no. I mean, obviously, they have to keep things moving. They're gonna push a little bit. They're gonna push a little bit. Dave?
I got a bunch of questions about it. I'd like to have the topic in a meeting. I don't want to get into it tonight, I don't think.
Okay, I'm with you. I think the biggest thing for me though is timeline for staff. You know, when I saw 6 months, I was like, oh my gosh. That's just the only, and I think that would be the only pressing thing, but I'm with you, Dave. I'd love to talk about it more with you guys and hear Norm what you're saying.
I would like to be able to like tour the facility. Can we, you know, I know we can go to the rodeo grounds, but it's Chicago Ranch. Is Joyce still out there?
No, they own it now. It's Triview's.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we could ask.
Yeah.
No harm in that.
To just drive around or walk around or just ride around. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I was thinking
Got a
that.
gator. We can take the gator.
I have a few
Ride my
comments.
motorcycle out there.
Go ahead, Cindy.
A few things that I think that I wanted us to maybe have time to think about, consider is the Cindy, the water attorney, sounded like she had a little bit of reservation because we need to have a better idea of how the water project is to work. And so I think that's important that they need to, and where are the ground return flows? Are they going to go into Cottonwood? Are they going to go into Arkansas? So they need to have a better idea of how their system is going to work. And then a thought that I had, they're spending $100,000 is what I understood to do the big plan of what our rodeo grounds could look like. Do we have to match that $100,000?
No.
No. Okay. And if we went with this and did it, what do we currently have in our capital projects that might have to take a back seat, and how long would they have to take a back seat to be able to afford to do the plan that they come up with? And that was just a few things that I thought we should consider.
You know, basically a plan, Cindy, is just that. It's no different than the rec plan or trails. It's a plan. It's not something that you say you do tomorrow. It's just, here's what this is our vision. This is what we see we want to do with the rodeo. This is our rodeo grounds vision, which we don't have at this point. And so that's what they would be assisting us to make. So really nothing goes on the back burner unless we decide we want to bring something up front in their plan. So it's really our decision in the capital improvement side of it. It's our decision of what we want to do. So that's kind of how a plan works, if you want to think about it that way. There's nothing that's there. Obviously, the ice skating ring is in the rec plan. Well, we don't kick everything in the back just to bring up the ice skating ring. You move forward with the things that make sense, the trails, the things like that that we work towards. And then everything else evolves, like the pickle courts and stuff like that. So that's a plan, basically. So there's nothing that gets really pushed, if you want. Just don't think of it that way.
Okay.
Just because there's a plan there, you don't push anything back. Okay?
Okay.
Other comments? Go ahead.
I think just something I was hoping to put out there, because it might be a bit controversial, is there's been a lot of discussion on ways to manage overuse, right? We've got Envision coming back, and I was at a meeting and one of our county commissioners identified dispersed designated camping, or is it designated
Dispersed, designated.
So dry camping, because we know we have no water and sewer out there, as a way to just prevent people from stacking up in 4 Mile on a Friday night at 11 o'clock. I mean, this is a few years out because they have to revegetate, but I would be interested in pursuing that or making that part of the plan to help manage overuse. Would be my only comment on that. And then staff time, if you thought anything about staff time with this plan. And I mean, how are you feeling about, you know what I mean? It's like 6 months, I was like, because this needs to be public engagement. And so I was curious.
Well, and that's where you would want to have a pretty robust company leading that effort. The trick is you do have to have the local connection to really make it valuable. And so it would draw in staff time. You know, Earl had identified this in his 2021 project list, but there was no funding behind it. So it's going to be more of a, hey, let's just get our known user groups together and, you know, study a map and talk a little bit and try to form an updated vision for that area. I mean, that was going to take time, and I have doubts whether that was going to be an option for us this year anyway. So it is a very valid question about how much time can we fully allocate to this, considering it wasn't in our work plan at the beginning of the year. So I think it might be wise to, you know, if the board's interested in this after further thought and consideration, maybe we buy some time to properly plan the project.
Can't use it for 3 years anyway.
Good point. Yep.
That was awesome, though. That work session was fantastic.
Devin?
I agree with Trustee Volby that I think it's a lot to talk about and think about. I think it'd be good to have an actual line item about it.
What session or line item?
What were you saying?
Some space somewhere.
Yeah, some space.
I would imagine during the meetings, it's in case we have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be, you know, good to do like an agenda item, just that the idea of annexation, that'll have to be public process anyway, but keep in mind that the county might not, like the county residents might look to BV as kind of the fault for this water going out of the town if it's not done right, you know, even though Triview's taking it. And if we annex in, then they don't really have to do that 1041. So there's some politics involved and when to bring people in. So it's probably good to have a open, you know, on the agenda discussion about it at some point.
Public comment style. Public comment.
Well, Philip and I will talk about it then and see, we'll find a slot, put it on the agenda.
I think that's all I had. Just thank you all.
Good, thanks, Joe. What do you got?
I think I said it, but thank you.
Okay, Libby?
I'm good. Thanks.
Libby's good. Norm?
I have a question for Sean.
Hey, Norm.
Wake up.
Is there
is there a written rule or a law that you can have only so many crosswalks, or crosswalks have to be so far apart, or something along those lines? And the reason I ask is I'd like to see a crosswalk from that east school parking lot over to CCHS, because they come and go for lunches and we come and go because of this COVID thing, and we just can't seem to get across there some days.
So down on East Main Street?
Yeah, East Main, from the east parking lot of the school over to CCHS. Yeah, I know there is one just up the road, that's why I asked. If there was a distance you had to incorporate or something like that.
I think a lot of it kind of lands into, street designs and safe crossing. Definitely worth looking at, kind of analyzing that before we just move into it, just to kind of determine what the vulnerabilities might be, if there's any there. And I don't see really any likely, anything outstanding, but I think it needs to probably be evaluated through that process. One thing we didn't, when we put that crosswalk in on West Main Street, just, near that Linderman intersection, we kind of identified that with, more of a feasibility, and looking at the traffic speeds there to kind of help nail that, or selling points, right? Assuredness, vulnerability assessments and things like that. But Matt, I'd be happy to look into that crosswalk on East Main Street though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Anything else, Norm? Nope. Good. Dave?
Couple. One, follow up on tonight's conversation with Joseph Teufel. You mentioned the heritage, moving into a line item. Is there a space to talk about that sometime before budget season? I know that they'd asked for 5,000, now we're awarded 850. I'm wondering if we're gonna have a conversation with Heritage.
I'd be
space with the San Rosa Lima Church, if they can take it over. There's a bunch of connections in there that I think that maybe we should talk to those guys sometime this year.
I'll second that.
I would like to see it, let's say, at budget season. You know what I mean? So if we can move it into a line item at budget, I think it's relevant.
Yeah.
It has merit.
But no.
And it's like, we have given in the past, and more than 850.
Yeah.
I think it bodes well for the town to uphold them, not support them, but, give them a little money every once in a while to be, because it's the town. So I'd like to see an option like that in the budget. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And we could look at a light item thing.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
The second one is just a question before I get too deep into it. Did anybody else get a phone call from Sam Liebel this week?
Yes.
Oh.
Somebody? No? He's a reporter for a local paper in Gunnison.
Gunnison, he called me and I missed him.
Okay.
It's about a development.
Yeah, they've got a new development going on in Crested Butte, and there's talk of STR regulation or restriction in the proposal. And during Sam's research of towns that have done it right and towns that have done it wrong, apparently South Main is an example of what has been done wrong in the development community. So he wanted information on our discussion about STRs and South Main in particular. So I didn't have a lot to offer the guy, but I just didn't know if he contacted anybody else.
I think you
Mark and Mayor are the only ones that received that call. Seems like a pretty slanted.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. It was a paper.
Yeah.
When I first heard I had the message, I thought, well, it was town, well, wanting, something. And then I go, oh, it's a newspaper. Oh, it's a newspaper. What's he want? So, Mark, you're next. Go ahead. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, well, just to follow up on that, I did pick up that phone call and I did have a conversation with the reporter. He did want to ask some fairly pointed questions. And I basically said, you know, these are decisions that the town of Gunnison is going to have to make on their own. Just like every other community in the state of Colorado, they're going to have to make some decisions on some local matters. And so, you know, I did share with him that South Main is a successful development. It's part of development that we want. We have it in town. We're trying to make it match into town, and we're trying to make it not necessarily be its own little thing. So, you know, he did, apparently there was some comments made from a planner in a meeting at their staff. So I said, I don't necessarily think that their perception is our reality. So I did comment on that, and then just it basically is about an annexation that they're proposing on the east side of town that's probably gonna, you know, add 30 or 40% of new land area to the town. And so there's some concern over the impacts on that annexation. So,
Crazy. I think there's any land left there.
yeah, I basically told them that that is something that their political leadership is going to have to weigh. So.
Anything else, Mark?
Yeah, my apologies for the lengthy explanation tonight and taking a lot of your time, but I just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of things that we deal with in the planning department. We get a lot of inquiries, everything from a fence permit to an annexation. And so things are complex, and things are always going to be more complex given the fact that land that hasn't developed tends to have more problems than the land that already is developed. It's probably the reason why it's developed. It was easy land to develop. So what I apologize for taking a good amount of your time with that presentation, but that whole area has a long history that helps educate you as to the complexities of that problem. So I'll just stop right there. On a related note, we did approve John Crumb's site plan and plat this week. So you'll see him start to be doing work out there on Pine and Evans. So I think that's a good thing to note. And then I just would note that the state of Colorado has increased money into the Revitalizing Main Street program. So there's an opportunity to potentially add some more sidewalks or other things in town, and we'll be looking at that as well. So
Would that include replacing the lights too?
Could be. That would be something that we would have to check in with CDOT. So there's an opportunity. I think the last fund was for 50 grand with a 5 grand match from the town. So there's an opportunity, I think, to go up to another potentially 150 with another 10% match from town. So if we do pursue that, there will be some requests coming your way for additional funding, but I think it's a great opportunity with only a 10% match.
I did go to that information session on, did you go to that? That was awesome. I think the date is like May 14th or something though, but it looks like a great opportunity, and it's such a small match.
Well,
and let me know if I can help with that in any way, or
the
support, or.
The key is really going to be, given the amount of workload that we are experiencing now and what we're going to experience this summer, it is going to be what can we actually get done before December 31st of this year. So that is going to be one of the other elements that we'll have to consider.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Sounds like shovel-ready lots, shovel-ready.
What you got, Earl? Anything else?
Just one quick thing, since I kind of rushed through my report there, is as we did not get our grant funding we had requested for pickleball courts and trail development. So we're starting some new strategies, what we can do with some of the seed money that we have. So picking apart projects, doing small projects in different phases. So we'll come back to the board in a couple weeks with an update on a phased in pickleball construction concept. So we'll spend more time with you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Earl. Cindy. You're muted, Cindy.
Muted, Cindy.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep.
Okay. I enjoyed Mark's presentation tonight on the Crossman water lines. It's really interesting what is all is involved. And it's amazing how many lots actually fit into that subdivision. But I'm all for when they decide on those water lines that they go in with enough power. I will say that they don't need redone later when the subdivision is built out and everybody's using water out there. And that's all I'm gonna say on that. And then for Philip, I was gonna tell him, and it's a funny haha. You can make more money with an STR as a long-term rental on our north property. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Cindy. Devin.
I'm good.
You're good. Lillian.
I don't have anything.
No, man.
Lillian, you made it.
Okay, don't do this.
So awesome you have deputy on your name.
Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I had about a 45-minute presentation, if y'all don't.
Motion.
Yeah, no,
Get to me yet.
I don't have anything for you, thanks.
Oh, it's almost 10 o'clock. We can go a little longer, right? No, I do want to take an opportunity to really recognize staff on all the stuff that's going on right now. And all the topics and presentations you all heard last night, there's a lot of work that goes in behind all of that. Things are presented in such a good way, and I appreciate that. I know you all do too. I will say and let you know that we will be looking at some organizational changes that we'll be bringing to you for discussion and consideration. We'll call those opportunities. But there's things that we need to address within our organization. We have a few departments that are reaching max capacity. We're risking burnout in several areas. And so we collectively need to address some of those. And so over the next couple of months, let's say, we'll be bringing forward some of that for you all to help with some decision-making towards that effort. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
And while we have everybody here, Libby and I have touched base a little bit on policy, board policy, which Philip had forwarded a tidbit of our policy, and then also policy in Salida, which is more than comprehensive, I will put, dwarfs ours. And we had a little discussion about that as to why we think it's evolved the way it has. And I think Joel can appreciate this. In the past, board was more directed at staff because we had so many staff issues that we were addressing constantly. Now, all of a sudden, our board has a great staff and we aren't addressing those. We don't have to address those things anymore. So now it's here. And so we're going to set up a work session and get our board policy down, how we communicate email wise. Jeff, we're going to ask you for input on that, what you're seeing other towns doing, so that we now have a policy that the next board moves in has a policy. And it's something that will help transition from transition to transition, so that staff doesn't have a new idea of a policy coming in every time there's a new board. And so that's something that we want to work for and get something down so that we all can be on the same page all at the same time. One process, and I know it's been brought up before, Jeff, is Robert's rules. So keep that in motion in the back of your mind as to why or why not. And so when we have this work session, we can talk about that.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, I think we need to do something. We need to get everything in line. So that's all I have. Anybody have anything else besides a motion? Got a motion, second, Volpe. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right.